welcome back to Unbroken Arrows podcast. As always, I'm Catherine, and today Greg is not with us, which is kind of unusual because the last couple weeks I've been the one missing. But today I have Nate with me. Nate is my boyfriend, as we've talked about before on the podcast, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Nate. I'm originally from Northwest Iowa, and now I live in South Dakota.
Wow. What a deep background information. Nate, you are quite the hunter. What got you started in hunting?
I actually started fishing when I was younger. I was pretty fortunate to grow up with access to 2 private ponds of my grandparents.
Spoiled.
That were fully stocked with fish. So I started fishing at a really young age with my dad and grandpa. And then I did a little walking with them, pheasant hunting. And then Iowa has a youth deer season, which I did the very first year that I could. And then picked up archery hunting along the way too.
And you've been archery hunting since you were how old?
Oh, I've had
12?
Probably 12 bow. I didn't probably start hunting till probably 14 or 15, I would guess.
Okay. Which I didn't start archery hunting until I was 17, 18 maybe. I was probably 16. I don't know. The years all fly by.
I remember growing up with a mission craze and a couple buddies, and I would walk around town shooting rabbits with our bows. Middle of town.
Back in the good old days when you could do that.
Yeah, without getting cops called on you.
And you mostly hunted deer growing up, correct?
Yeah, we didn't pick up turkey hunting till probably my junior year of high school.
And you did a little bit of pheasant.
We did quite a bit of pheasant. It's nothing like South Dakota, but we had some pretty good ground to pheasant hunt. And I did a lot of that with my grandpa. He would always take me out. So
I like to claim, well, it's not really a claim, it's the truth, that I took him on his first goose hunt. We went together on the first elk hunt, first rifle hunt, because in Iowa you can't rifle hunt. You have to use shotgun for deer. What else? First muley hunt? No, that's not true. First muley harvest.
Yeah, I've gone a couple times in South Dakota with my bow, but I've failed to harvest mule deer. So.
Yeah, you got your first mule deer. What else? Pigeons? First pigeon hunt?
No, that's not true.
True pigeon hunt, where you decoyed the pigeons.
That's accurate.
Yeah.
Didn't do any dove in Iowa.
I would say, did you dove hunt? So first dove hunt. We expanded your horizons a little bit.
A little bit.
Nate's definitely more knowledgeable when it comes to deer, though. I'll give you that. I'm putting it on the record.
Oh, turkeys too.
Ooh, okay. Well, you can beg to differ on that.
Okay.
But I'll give you deer. I'll give you that one. All right. Well, I actually wasn't really planning about talking about this, but I think it'd be a good one to talk about. Nate and I have done a lot of hunting together, which I think is kind of not unusual, but not a lot of couples do that. Do you think that has helped or worsened our relationship? He's on the spot.
Probably both. Because definitely there's I'm trying to think. It was probably elk. Towards the end of the week for elk hunting, it was to the point where it's like, all right, week might be long enough.
We were pretty sick of each other.
But no, I think it's been good, especially traveling. Last year going 6.5 hours out west. I mean, we were done in it first day, so we didn't really get it tented or anything like that. But even trips down to Nebraska turkey hunting have always been pretty fun. Still got to get used to her not sitting still in a blind, but
I'm a fidgeter. I like to move. I can't sit still. It's the ADHD.
Yeah, it's for sure something.
Borderline ADHD. I can't. I'm laying down. I'm taking naps. It's a good thing I have Nate as my personal scouter, because I would probably miss a lot of the turkeys.
Say that Nebraska bird you killed, you got pretty lucky on.
Yeah. Yeah. I had like just laid down on the floor and Nate was watching out for me.
It was a prime example of turkeys will come in quiet.
Didn't make any noise until it got to the blind.
It gobbled on the roost, and it was probably 2 hours later, and it didn't gobble once in that time.
Well, I think it's a great thing to hunt with your partner because, like he said, the elk trip, like we got to see each other at our worst. I was annoyed because I hadn't gotten very much sleep, and I love my sleep if you can't tell. And Nate was annoyed because we weren't seeing anything, so he couldn't shoot anything. And I wasn't sitting still, so Nate was annoyed with that. And my phone kept dying, so I was using all of his like portable charger juice.
Yeah, there was the one night that we
stayed
up there. We did not have much for battery left to charge stuff. I ended up having to run the truck for a while just to charge.
No, and
phones.
That one, we had brought what we thought were the like instant freezer meals. Turned out they weren't, so we didn't have any food other than like a couple granola bars. And Nate was like, it'll be fine. Like, we'll just get food tomorrow. And I was like, no, like I need to eat. So we drove, what was it, like 2.5 hours?
Well, we thought it was going to be an hour. And then
the place was closed.
Everywhere was closed. And it was 11 o'clock at night. So then we ended up, it was probably 2 hours.
We drove all the way to Spearfish at night. Yeah. So that I could get Taco Bell.
Yeah, and then drove all the way back at that point. By the time we got back up there, it was probably 1:30 in the morning. And we were getting up in 4 hours, 5 hours. So.
Yeah, but I was happy. I had my Taco Bell.
We had elk bugles outside the truck, though.
That was cool. Very cool. Well, when we were elk hunting, when you were elk hunting and I was your pack mule, before we went out there, you had already set up a couple trail cameras on public land to kind of be able to scout the area since we were 6 hours away from it. We obviously, you could, but it would be a lot of gas. You can't go out every weekend to check it. There's a lot of debate going around trail cameras right now, though. Do you want to give like a rundown on that?
Well, I do know there are 4 states now. Utah is the main one, and I think Arizona, maybe, but I'm not for sure on that. For sure, have banned the use of cell cameras, possibly even normal trail cameras. That I'm not sure on. I know there's a couple states that have talked about it as well. I know Iowa, there's rumors of possibly not being able to leave a trail camera on public ground overnight.
I think it was equipment just in general overnight. And ground they were blinds. Using that as like and you also can't do trail cameras.
Yeah, but it's weird because they were saying tree stands would have been fine yet.
Yeah, that's interesting. Cell camera, meaning that the camera actually sends pictures to the phone. For anyone that's not quite sure what that means. And then just a normal trail camera takes pictures, but you have to go and pull the SD card to be able to see what the camera has taken.
And I get where people come from about the aiding in it. And I'm completely honest about it. I mean, the biggest deer I've killed to date, archery, I wouldn't have killed that deer without a cell camera. So,
Nate was in class in college, got a picture of the deer, basically got up, walked out, and went and sat.
And my professor asked me the next time we had class, it's like, "Do you get sick or something?" I said, "Actually, my target buck showed up, and I hadn't seen him in a month, so I left." And I mean, the funny thing with that too is I had 4 does work downwind of me, and they're 15 yards behind the blind, blowing because they had got the wind. And I look up and this buck is rubbing a tree, and these does were blowing for probably 10, 15 minutes. And I grunted twice and he came running into 20 yards. And
it's the beauty of a butt that's in rut.
Wasn't even rut.
Care. Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it would have been pre-rut if anything, but it was October 28th.
Oh, I thought you shot it like early November.
No.
That's still pre-rut.
I think it's probably pre-rut, but he wasn't acting like anything like that. But I mean, the grunt definitely got his attention.
And so the states that have banned trail cameras, like Utah, is that only on public land? Do you know?
That I don't know for sure off the top of my head.
Checked.
I know a couple of them have talked about only public land, but I think Utah in general might be all cameras in general.
I'm going to look it up really quick, see if I can find anything. It says all trail cameras are prohibited on public land from July 31st to December 31st. Because I don't even know. Trail camera using internal data storage and not capable of transmitting data is permitted for use on private land for the purposes of taking protected wildlife, taking pictures of protected wildlife. So I don't understand. I was thinking about this. On private land like that, can people not just claim that it's for security reasons? And then how can they ban that?
They probably could say it's for security. I'm guessing law enforcement has already thought about that.
Right.
I mean, if they're going to try to pass that law, but I mean, if it's just public, then.
Right, on public land. And I can see that. I listened to some, I don't remember who it was, so sorry to whoever said this. I'm not taking credit. Someone said something about they understand why like cell cameras are prohibited on public land because it's surveilling public property when you're not even there, and it can become a privacy issue, which I think is a little bit of a stretch, but I can see where people would be upset, especially like hikers or something that are just wanting to go on that land to run around, and then there's something taking pictures of them. Like I can see why that would upset people.
I think if there's a piece, we always turkey hunted in Iowa, and I actually know a fair number that deer hunted as well, and it's a public piece, but there's a ton of hikers out there because it's actually a
park.
And it's not even a park. It's technically like.
Would it be like Good Earth?
Well, it's Iowa side of Good Earth.
Yeah. So it's they've got walking trails.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of people that deer hunted and turkey hunted, but whenever you're out there, you're running into someone that's hiking.
Mm-hmm. And there's isn't there plenty of cities? Is Iowa one of them that you can actually like hunt in the city archery?
There is suburban hunts down south.
Is that southern?
Yeah, they give, but it's weird. So you have to fill a specific number of doe takes to get a buck take.
Right. You have to like fill, isn't it like 2 or 3? Or is it more than that? Really?
Yeah, I think some zones it's quite a bit more than that. And you have to fill those to get your buck take the next year. If you don't fill them, you don't get your buck take the next year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You have to like call it in then? Or what?
Well, in Iowa, you always have to report.
Oh, you do?
Mm-hmm.
Like as soon as you shoot it, you have to report?
It's within, I think you get 7 days.
Oh. How do they check that?
Well, if they see a picture and realize you never called it in.
No, like what if you like say you want to get your buck take next year and you're not filling all of your doe takes? Like, can you just call in and be like, oh, I shot a doe? Like, how do they check that?
I'm sure they got their ways. I guess, I don't know. I've never been a part of suburban hunts, so I don't know how they do it, but I know like Northwest Iowa, when you fill the take, you have to call in and give your code, and you have to say whether it's a buck, whether it was a doe. And you have to do that for every big game animal.
Interesting. That's crazy. South Dakota, they like just send out a survey at the end of the year. And I think like it's something crazy. Like 75% of people don't fill it out, which you should fill it out because that helps them figure out how many tags they need to be giving out and things like that. So if you get the email, no matter what it's for, you should fill it out. It's my little 2 cents there.
I think it's overall populations, especially on like heavy EHD and CWD years, mainly EHD. I think there's a lot more research that can be done with EHD.
Yeah.
Basing on numbers of deer taken in specific counties.
It's crazy with Greg being from Nebraska, us obviously being here in South Dakota, and Nate being from Iowa, like the differences state from state on prices of tags, laws, like other just like cultural things that all the states do differently. Like it's kind of like going back to Nate's only shotgun hunting. He sucks rifle hunting.
That is pretty accurate statement.
We joke, but it's not really a joke, that he has a better grouping at 100 yards with his bow than he does with like a rifle.
It's because my archery group at 100 yards with the bow is so good.
Okay, but or the fact that your group at 100 yards with a rifle is so bad.
Just give me a 2 foot by 2 foot board and we'll hit it.
Sometimes. Yeah. And it's not even just rifles. It's anything with a scope except for his 22.
Yeah, 22 I'm really good with.
22, he's spot on. You give him a crossbow?
Well, I wouldn't even say that because when I was shooting a crossbow, it wasn't bad. I was still shooting softball size groups at 100.
Okay. Yeah, but that's part of like, I grew up. I was probably 12 years old when I shot my first deer with a rifle. That's all I knew. So I make fun of him because he is really bad with a rifle.
Give me 3 years.
Okay. Whatever you say. I've also never shotgun hunted deer. I've only, like, I don't even really understand that.
Well, now the point, pretty much everyone is shooting a
350 Legend.
350 Legend straight ball cartridge, 450 Bushmaster, or
so it's basically a rifle.
But even like my dad uses a 220 Savage, which is a bolt action slug specific gun with a scope. I mean, you can shoot those out to 100, 150 yards.
How far can you shoot it? 30?
Probably. Looking back for a while, we thought that gun was off. I think it was just me.
Yeah, probably. And again, I'll give it to you. You're better with a bow. But you give me a rifle and you're going to lose every single day.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Shotgun, I'm a little bit better.
No.
Yeah.
Not even close.
We can beg to differ. We use trail cameras pretty frequently throughout the season. I have mine running all year round. I have one of them going all year round just to kind of keep an eye on things. Do you think it disrupts like wildlife at all to have cameras out?
See, this is actually a weird topic because some say, depending on the trail camera, depending if there's a flash or infrared glow, that some deer might get affected by it.
And what do you mean affected? Like they just won't go in that area?
Like they might see the flash and get spooked by it. And also, I mean, if you bust a mature buck out of an area, this is where we argue a little bit.
We do argue with this.
In Iowa, if we bust a mature buck out, we'd not see him again.
I've busted deer out and have seen him again.
Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't say you won't see him again, but
it depends on the area.
I think you just educated that deer a lot for them.
Educated.
Yeah. For them to realize. And I've had it where I've had flash on trail cameras and it'll go off and the deer will look at it and then it'll go off again and the buck is running away. So I don't know if it truly affects them, if it's just an area thing, depending on the pressure or.
And I wonder if it like really just depends on the year too. Cause like last year, going back to chasing mature bucks away, like after I shot my rifle deer on the property, we saw a couple does after that. But there weren't really any bucks, which years before, I've shot a doe before buck season, like 2 weeks before, 1 week before, like your rifle buck opens, or any deer, I guess is what it actually is. And then I've had tons of deer. So it's like, was it the rifle shot that spooked it? Was it that we just left too much scent out there? Was it that these deer just found somewhere else that they'd rather be this year? I don't know.
That's the weird thing about leaving too much scent. I mean, that could be the weird thing because we hadn't been in there at all. That corner. But, I mean, we were maybe in there for an hour and walked 100 yards.
Right.
And we could drive the truck right up to it. So I don't know if it would be scent.
I don't know. There's all kinds of things. Wouldn't it be lovely if you could just read their mind?
It'd make things so easy.
It would make it a whole lot easier. Yeah. But so going back to public land, one of the hot topic things is corner crossing right now, and there's properties in South Dakota that the only way to get to is corner crossing. And in Colorado, that's illegal. There's still that big, I don't know all of the details, but that big lawsuit with the hunters in Colorado that used the ladder, which I think is genius because then they're not touching anyone's fences. But they were getting claimed that what was it? Basically, they're stealing the air. They're tampering with the air
in court,
which is bogus.
At that point, they're just trying to find every little thing they possibly could pull out to use.
It's insane, which I'm pretty sure it's a backcountry hunters and anglers like chapter leader or something that was a lawyer and it has taken on this entire case and has basically got them through, which they won the lawsuit.
Right, won the criminal, now they're doing civil. And
they won the first civil, and then whoever is fighting it or whatever appealed it again. And so they're still fighting it. And this is like 5 years later. And corner crossing is basically when there's two pieces of properties and only the corners touch each other. So there's no really good way to cross a fence or just get to that other piece of property without corner crossing. And so where this lawsuit came from is these two, I want to say it was two hunters, maybe it was three, used a ladder so that they weren't ever touching the fence so they couldn't get caught for like using this person's property to just climb over it. And they, like I said, they got in trouble for stealing the farmer's air or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I don't quite get it. I mean, I've even thought about, I know a piece in South Dakota and you can't access it without corner crossing. But at this point, either you go in there and put an access to the ground, which should be the case anyways, or you make the landowner purchase that land for 3 or 4 times more than what it's probably worth, just to prevent it. Because, I mean, if you're going to have state ground and the only one that can access it is the private landowner next to it,
that defeats the entire purpose.
It makes no sense. So either you make him purchase it and he's going to purchase it for 3 or 4 times more than what it's worth, or you're going to put an access to it.
And that access doesn't even have to be big.
Put a foot gap.
Yeah.
Connect two fences, and put a foot gap.
And it's like in Colorado, especially, it'll be like charts. It'll be like a charted graph almost of private property and public property. And so it's like, I was going to say thousands, but I want to say it's like 1 million acres that is unaccessible because of this.
Yeah, I don't quite get it. I know there's some really good pieces that I think if you could access are really good, but I know there's also pieces that only private guys can get on in.
Well, even in South Dakota, there's pieces of public property that are completely surrounded by someone's private property.
Out west.
It's like a random chunk in the middle of this guy's 300,000 acres that's public, and there's no way to access it unless you had like a helicopter just drop you down.
Well, that was I remember one piece. It's the public starts 300 yards off the road. The private landowner owns that next to the road. Otherwise, there's no access. And so I remember knocking on the guy's door asking if I could just access it. He said, "No, that's my ground." I said, "I'm the only one that gets on it because they have to access my land to get to it."
Yeah.
What's even the point of having that ground public, then
So why would the state even own that?
at that point, there's no use to it.
How does the state even get on it? I say the state like the state's a person. Who is the state?
Yeah, unless there's some access that I couldn't find, but
I think you
everything
need
was
a
surrounded by
helicopter.
private.
Or like a hot air balloon. If anyone has a helicopter, let me know. We'll get on some really good property.
Just don't buy land, buy a helicopter.
Yeah, right. That actually is probably about an even swap at this point. Land's so expensive.
That it is.
That's actually a really good idea. If anyone sells helicopters, let me know. I might be interested.
No, she's not.
I might be. If I win the lottery or something.
Might need to win 2 lotteries.
Yeah. Well, now that I think about it, remember that lodge we stayed at for family vacation? And it was like only the very center of the pond is public. Like public water access.
It's technically not true. I guess your brother looked it up, and technically that's not.
Oh, the map's not right?
Yeah.
Oh, we were laughing because this private lake we were on, like the only way to get on it is if you basically rent out this cabin.
Well, supposedly that ramp's actually public.
Is it?
Supposedly.
Really?
Well, it's not a private boat ramp.
They don't own it, even though they own the land around it?
They might own it.
How does that work?
We have to. AJ looked it up on.
What does non-meandering water mean? Is that an example of a meandering water?
If a body of water flows through privately held land but is considered non-meandered.
That tells me nothing.
Private landowners own all of the land adjacent to and underneath these bodies of water. So it's got to be more like a river or creek. Like if you were taking a kayak down a...
But you'd still be able to go down the water. You just can't touch any of the land.
Can't touch the land underneath.
Right. You would have
water.
To float.
Got to stay in the kayak. Can't touch any banks.
Isn't that kind of like dry lake though? Like dry, it was all once dry.
I don't think I've ever been on dry.
You've never been on dry? 1 or 2?
Mm.
Interesting. Well, I guess, again, the state must have bought it or something, because at one point it was all like people's property.
I think there could be cases of the non-meandering on that piece. I just don't know how it would work without looking at a map to see what's actually public.
Yeah, but basically we're on this private lake, and when we looked up the original map, which this map is probably not correct because it was just on Onyx. It shows like a 4 acres in the middle of this pond that's public water access. But we were like, the only way to get to it is if you like used a helicopter and dropped a boat right in the middle of that. Otherwise, there's no way to get there.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, that's mind-boggling to me. It doesn't make any sense, especially like why would the state spend money on public lands that's not public?
Yeah, I don't quite understand the whole setup with that one.
Like here in South Dakota, we're like, yeah, that's a 200-acre property. Like, of course we need to get on that. That's a ton of land. You go out west and they're like 200 acres. Like, we wouldn't even touch that. Like, that's nothing. They're fighting for like millions of acres. And I'm like, I want the 4 acres that I can't get to.
That's even Iowa, though, too. I mean, East River around here and Iowa are very similar. I mean, Iowa's all timber for the most part, but even in Iowa,
flat. We have nothing.
80 acres of timber in Iowa is really good. I think it's definitely area. I mean, 80 acres of pasture around here doesn't do you much. East River, depending what you have, but 80 acres of timber in
right, that's a lot of
Iowa
land.
or southern Iowa even is. Really
southern Iowa is a whole different ballpark. But that's like a non-resident for Iowa was what, like $550, $600 for a deer tag?
It would cost me, I think it's $65 now for a preference point. It would take me 5 or 6 years to draw, and it's $650.
Which they get you, because if you go in and look, a buck tag for non-residents or an any deer, they call it an any deer, right? Is only like $320. But then you have to buy a hunting license, which is like $150. And they make you buy a doe tag, which is like $200 some. So it's like right away you start off and you're like, oh, this isn't bad at all. And then they just keep being like, oh, and you have to buy this, and you have to buy this, and you have to buy this.
I mean, even like the chances of shooting a 150 plus inch deer down there got to be pretty high.
Yeah.
So I think people know that. It's just hard for me where I look at, Colorado or Montana's gotten a little bit high, but you can go on an elk hunt for, granted you're traveling a little bit more, but for the actual tag, plus a lot more meat in the freezer off an elk.
And a lot of those are like a combination deer elk tag, aren't they?
Montana is.
Yeah.
I want to say Montana's up to probably 1,300 now, and that's elk and mule deer.
Nate, the other day, we're talking about this elk and mule deer combo. And he's like, yeah, that'd be sweet. And then we can get two mule deer and 2 elk. I was like, calm down. Like, let's set our sights at least getting 1 elk. Like, what are the chances we completely fill all of our tags unless we're out there for like a month?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's me and one of my friends. We went to the hills for the first time a couple years ago for a turkey hunt. And we had our archery tags, we had our shotgun tags, and we're like, yep, we're gonna fill all our tags, and then we can go to the outdoor campus and buy another tag. And I think we shot 1 bird. We were out there for like a week. She missed one. It's okay, it happens. I'm still a little salty about it. And then I shot a jake. And then we didn't see another turkey the entire week. Nate claims that if he was there, we would have filled all of our tags.
But I also think it's tough. Out to the hills quite a bit. You do not stumble across a lot of turkeys out there.
You do in the fall. They're all over in the fall.
In the spring, it's completely different.
It's crazy. They're pretty smart for being pea-sized brains.
Smartest, dumbest bird there is.
Smartest, dumbest bird? Yeah.
And I've had some turkeys that I couldn't believe came to decoys, and I've had some that hang up that I don't understand why. Especially when they come in from, you watch them come in from 300, 400 yards across the field and they hang up at 60 yards.
Like, why? What did you see?
But
what's happening? I've definitely hunted more since we started dating. You probably would say the opposite because now you have a big boy job.
I think with the time that I do get, it's definitely spent hunting, and I'm saving my vacation days for hunting. Seems like each year we're planning a week-long trip to.
We're doing antelope this year.
So antelope / deer.
Yeah, well, antelope. And then if you happen to see a deer, we're going to shoot it. A good deer. But yeah, neither of us have antelope hunted. We're hoping to go with my uncle if he doesn't back out. Mark, if you're listening to this, don't be a pussy.
Calling it a 50-50.
Don't be lame. Come hunting with us. We're going to be so much fun.
Probably have to sight in his bow up there.
Yeah, you're probably going to have to sight it in for him. It's been, 2 years now? Mark, I love you.
Year.
You are amazing. I'm actually going out to camp with him and his family in Yellowstone. So that'll be fun. Mark's great, guys. We give him a lot of shit, but.
You married into a larchwood, so he's at least got some sense to him.
Oh, okay. Okay. Or we're both crazy. One of the other big things I've noticed between like Iowa and South Dakota, and it might just be family to family too, is that we just hunt very differently.
I mean, to the extent of things.
Well, even like when we turkey hunt together, he'll like call. I'm like, why would you just call? Like, why would you call that? And he's like, just let me call. I'm like, no, why would you call? Like, we want to set up blinds in different spots. We want to put our decoys in different places.
I wouldn't necessarily say that's all different.
I think it is. Sometimes I just let you do whatever you want because I don't feel like making choices. I usually let Nate make the choices because then if it doesn't work out, it's Nate's fault.
That's accurate.
But if it was up to me, I usually would do things differently than what he would do.
Turkey's always a little weird because you never know where they're going to come from. At least, like in when I hunted Iowa, I, for the most part, had a pretty good idea of where the turkeys were going to come from. South Dakota, they can come from all over.
Yeah, they just come from wherever they feel like it.
There's 3 different roosts. I mean, Iowa, there's always like one roost that they would come from, and then all the birds would split off of it. I mean, you might get 2 that would roost over in the tree on the other side, but mainly they would be in one area.
In the same spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple different trees that they roost on our property. But that's like, he went out and set up the blind for me one night because I was working, and so I wasn't going to be able to do it until like either like way late at night or just go early the next morning. And I like told him kind of where I wanted it. And I was like, just send me a pin. And so he sent me a pin. I was like, why would you put it there? I was like, that is not where I said I wanted it. So he moved it a little bit, which I didn't have like an exact spot I wanted it. So you did pretty good with the instructions I gave you.
You sit up by the tower, and where I put it was between 2 crossings.
Yeah. And they went behind us. Did end up getting a couple to come in, but the majority of the turkeys crossed behind us. And Nate was like, they came from behind you? I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and they were in the other roost, and they hadn't really been using that roost all year. I mean, they've been in, there was a couple that were in that roost the opening morning, but not a lot. So when you said they came behind, I was a little shocked because they definitely were in that other roost. But like, in my opinion, when you have 2 crossings, I did not know there was a crossing behind, because from what the fence looked like, it looked like it shouldn't be a crossing. Turkeys hate fences, so they're going to find a gap. I don't remember seeing a gap back there, except for the big one where the 3 fences run into each other. So I thought for sure, I'm like, putting the blind in the middle of 2 crossings, it's going to be your best scenario, because if they come on the other crossing or the first crossing, it's 60, 70 yards from the blind, and
yeah,
you're going to struggle.
That's even though, like, with deer, Nate's very much like, all right, if it's not the right wind, like it's not the perfect wind, like don't sit in that stand. And I'm like, well, I can't shoot a deer if I'm not sitting in a stand. Like, I might as well just go. And Nate's like, no, you're going to mess him up. I'm like, well, like, am I?
See, I learned from a very young age, depending on the wind, was whether or not I was hunting.
Yeah. And I just makes whether or not I put scent away on or not. I've done better. Give me that. I look at the wind sometimes now.
Yeah. She'll look at the wind, see the wind, and then choose the wrong stand. Why?
I also just don't understand directions. I'm directionally challenged. But I usually, give me some credit, I usually make decent decisions when it comes to the wind now.
You've definitely gotten better.
But when we started dating, I was like, well, I want to sit in that stand. And he's like, your wind's going to go directly to all the deer. I'm like, so?
Yeah. But she would probably still manage to kill a deer.
Yeah. It's because I'm good. My favorite are the like stories of people, they walk up on their deer and they think it's dead, and they'll like put the rifle in its antlers or something. And then it was actually just stunned, and it gets up and like runs away with its rifle. I think that's hilarious. And you'll see like the trail cam pictures of it. That's so funny.
That was one of my shotgun deer in Iowa. I was basically sat at 80 yards and it never moved, and it was laying flat on its side, and I got to probably 5 yards and it took off running.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so funny. You see videos of that happen every year, of people walking up on their deer and then it just running away. And you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily that was shotgun and not archery.
That's so funny. Did you get it again? Yeah. Did you shoot it? You did?
Oh, I had already.
Was it a doe?
No, it was that buck that I have.
In your office?
Did, yeah.
Why haven't I heard this story?
I don't know. I got pictures of it. That one was, I just about ran out of shells on that one.
Doesn't surprise me. You're not very good with a gun.
Well, I had actually put 2 through the front shoulder and 2 through the guts. I had hit it 4 times and it still ran probably 500, 600 yards.
That's crazy.
It is still, it was.
That's after you walked up on it? Or you walked up?
It was probably 500, 600 yards when I was walking up on it, and then it got up again and I shot it again. And you actually, when I got it in, you look at lungs were shot up. So it's like, I don't know how I did that. But
that's crazy. Those animals are so tough.
They got a will to live.
That's like my deer this year that had the broadhead in it, which it wasn't a perfect shot, but it should have died.
Well, you look at the entrance. The entrance was on the left side.
That was on the right side of the deer.
Or right side.
Because I almost right below the spine, my hand on the
and
broadhead.
The broadhead was basically at belly level in the opposite shoulder.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea. It caught vitals.
Yeah.
But it was probably, I would say probably a week or 2 old because the entrance was healed over, but it was starting to form the pus pockets. So.
I would say it was kind of getting yellow. And it was walking fine. Like you would have had no idea. It was chasing a doe. And the funny thing about that deer is it went to cross the fence, which was exactly where Nate and I both busted it last year. Same exact spot. And it crossed the fence and immediately turned back around and crossed the fence back over. It was like it did not want to be there for whatever reason.
He was bigger the year before.
Mm-hmm. Makes me so sad.
We didn't get a ton of pictures of him last year. But it was funny when you actually talk about scent. We went and put the blind up in that spot. And within 2 hours later, we're sitting in another tree stands on the property. And I get a notification and it was him walking out in front of the blind.
And I wanted to sit in the blind, but the wind wasn't good.
Well, may never know.
The world.
If you would have sat there with a bad wind, the deer would have been busted and would have been gone. You wouldn't have even shot him the following year. Someone would have got him that year.
Maybe. Whatever you say. All right. Well, thanks, Nate, for reluctantly coming on the podcast. This was against Nate's will. I promised him beer.
Somewhat accurate statement.
Was it awful?
No.
Are you going to come back again?
Sure. I enjoyed it.
Really?
Yeah.
Yay. I thought he was going to be like, I'm never doing that again.
Oh, it wasn't too bad.
You just got to talk about hunting.
It's not public speaking.
It's not public speaking. I can edit it out. Edit whatever you want out.
It's true.
It was great. Well, again, thank you. I enjoyed having you on. And although we're sad that Greg isn't here, I am glad to be back on the podcast. So next week, maybe you'll get both of us and we'll have some fun things to talk about. With that being said, to all of our listeners, take some time to get outside, enjoy the outdoors, and experience its healing powers. With that, on behalf of me and Greg and Nate, until next time.